We're glad to have you back. This is Business Morning, coming to you live from Channels Television. And we've been talking about Nigeria's unemployment rate. How do we tackle it? How can we bring an end, or at least reduce it, to ensure that everyone out there, especially the youth, are gainfully employed and, of course, have a source of livelihood. And our guest has been Mike Adeleye. He is a human capital development expert. Thank you, Mike, for still being a part of the show.
Thank you once again.
I would like us to go into the issue of entrepreneurship, because when we look at employment in Nigeria, it's just of recent, perhaps a few years ago, we're beginning to now pay more attention to the issue of entrepreneurship. And that takes us back to our school curriculum.
Sure.
Right now, to what extent have we been able to incorporate that into the school curriculum to ensure that everyone is been able to do something before they graduate from school?
Thank you. I think it's a new initiative which is just beginning to find its way into our educational system. I listened to Professor Aweshika this morning on the Sunrise Daily, and honestly, I felt the pain that she has in her heart when it comes to the effects, negativity of how our educational system is crumbling in this country. Now, before we can actually begin to talk about the entrepreneurship, we have to look into how do we start? Where do we start from? Now, you see, there's one thing that I did mention, I think, on this channel, I think about a year ago, thereabouts, when I spoke about graduates that lacks practical work experience. I mean, that is the beginning, the genesis of the whole problem. It's so pathetic for me to see a graduate who has gone through 4 or 5 years education at the university and graduated without an iota of work experience at all.
We've seen some interns, we've seen people who, perhaps after 2 years in school, they go for industrial training.
This at the Polytechnic.
Even some universities are beginning to do that.
Well, perhaps,
they're beginning to also send the undergraduates to get some work experience.
Let me tell
you, get them exposed to some extent as to how the workforce or the labor market is.
Let me tell you how it should work. I mean, I think the government should begin to look into this very critically. Now, it should be part of the curriculum that everyone in our tertiary education system, from polytechnics to university, even from A-levels, that they should see it as an important way of building their lives, to go for voluntary work. Now, what do I mean by that? You see, I know the economy is not too fantastic. So people are talking about the economic...
the issue of voluntary work.
Yeah.
Being able to work and not get paid.
But for everything that has value, there's a price for it. That's the honest truth. Now, if we begin to have the culture, you see, in all the climate, in the UK, for example, people will beg employer to actually, they'll beg, say, I'm studying this, can I come and do a voluntary work whenever I'm on holidays? Now, what does that do for you? If you go through 4 years in the university, and from your day one in university, every time you have holidays, you go to do voluntary work. It's free, but it's not free. It's actually, you're the one who are the beneficiary, because you are the one gaining in there.
The person is laying some kind of foundation.
You're supposed to be paying the employer in reality, right? Because you're going in there to gain some experience. So an employer will have to dedicate time to mentor you, to train you, to supervise you, to monitor you, to manage you, and it's a cost to the employer. But we don't think about that as voluntary work. We're thinking about what am I going to get at the end of it. Now, the advantage of this is by the time you run through maybe 1 or 2 companies for the 4-year educational period, by the time you'll be finishing, you'll be surprised, because it's an open door. You'll have been able to showcase the quality that you have with those companies. Then you'll be surprised. You might gain automatic employment. They might say to you, okay, when you graduate, come and work for us. Okay? Even if that doesn't happen, on your resume, it will be indicated on there that for the past 4 years I've been in school, I have 1 or 2 years work experience. And you're not going to come short of employment, because the reason why we have this huge number of unemployment in this country is the majority of our graduates are unemployable. That's the honest truth. In 2 ways. One, educationally, because some of them can't even write a very good essay. You see, when some people write give you, send a note to you. You know the way they text and they abbreviate on their that's why I said the social media way we're talking about is going the wrong direction. Because the same way they abbreviate and do their text and everything, that's the same way they send the right, where they want to write to you. And when you look at it, what is this? A graduate writing this sort of information to you? They can't even compose a very good, essay or sentence on the paper. So now that is one thing. The other one is they don't have practical work experience. If I'm an employer, for example, and you walk into me and you say you're a graduate, even if you have a first class, you want to work with me, and you have no experience whatsoever, it's going to take me statistically 6 months before you begin to contribute anything to my business. How does that work? Because I'm going to begin to monitor you, to train you, to mentor you, and you want me to be paying you salary when I'm doing that as well. It's not going to happen. Let's face the reality. That's one of the reasons why most graduates without work experience is not going to find a job. That's what I'm saying. Let the government begin to run a policy into all institutions that from day one, when you get in there, begin to, not enforcement, encourage them to go do voluntary work. Like this GIS now, the government is paying, is tipping out to, I'm into them. They could do the same thing there. Go do work experience while you were in school, and we pay you this amount of small money to keep, for you to keep up yourself. And that will work. By the time we begin to run that program, and by the time they finish and graduate, then the numbers of unemployed graduates will begin to drastically get reduced.
Drastically reduced. So that seems to be an encouraging word. Now, you've talked about a whole lot of things, but just as we wrap up the show, how do we get to sustain youth employment in Nigeria? What is the pathway to sustaining youth employment in Nigeria? We've talked about entrepreneurship, we've talked about voluntary work, we've looked at government policies. How do we make this stand together?
If you look into the the artistic world, where a lot of our youth are now beginning to go into music and everything, that just naturally happened by itself because no government pushed anyone in there. But what I think the government should begin to do is to begin to create avenues like sports centers, music centers, language centers, IT training, sponsored IT training centers whereby people could go and learn more skills. Language centers. These days, it's not beginning to become a global village. Learn German, learn Chinese. It's going to begin to reduce the unemployment because when you have multi-skills, you could become an economics graduate, for example. But if you have multi-skills as well, then of course it will help you out. You could do music, you could do athleticism, you could speak other languages. It doesn't necessarily mean because you're an accountant, you're going to have to be an accountant. Because of your other skills, you begin to help you out. That's what the government should be beginning to do. Now,
and that also takes us back to the issue of school curriculum because
absolutely.
When it comes to the issue of language now, as in having to introduce a child at an early stage to learn 2-3 other languages, aside his mother tongue, it's could be very important at that stage.
Very important.
Okay. Of course, what challenges do you think the government will have to tackle in being able to create this pathway to youth employment in Nigeria? What challenges do you envisage?
Having the right mechanism and the right tools, because it's one thing to have a good policy, to roll out a good policy, but if you don't have the mechanism to drive them, it's not going to work. We've seen a number of government policies that have been rolled out. They're great when you hear them for the first time, but the drivers of those policies are the problems. It's either the people that have no business in being in that particular area that begin to run it. I've seen several policies that the government put some people, some 1 or 2 or 3 people to head this program, but those people have no iota of whatever knowledge of that program. Why would you want to do that? The government should begin to, stop this political appointments because of this or that. Bring technocrats, bring people, knowledgeable people who are actually affiliated with those things to run it. It doesn't matter where they come from. That is.
In this part of the world, can you really separate political issues from appointment? Is it possible?
Well,
for now.
I've lived in quite a number of countries around the world, and I see how they do things. Political, appointment still comes in, but when we're talking about critical importance areas like this unemployment, every single person that wants to be the driver, whatever policy that comes under the umbrella, has to be people who are within that arena.
Thank you. That'll be all I can take From you, thank you, Mike. It's been a very
My
interesting
pleasure.
conversation, and of course, very incisive as well.
Thank you very much.
Mike Adeleye is a human capital development expert, and we've been looking at Nigeria's unemployment rates, looking at the crumbling labor force. Of course, how do we salvage the situation and create more jobs, encourage young people to begin to do something, voluntary work, create jobs for yourself, be an entrepreneur. All of these are key areas that should be looked into by our government. And that'll be all on Business Morning. We do appreciate your time with us. We hope you join us again same time tomorrow. I am Bolaji Akinole. Up next, Business Track.